You're listening to the IB4E Coaching Podcast.
Brought to you by IB4E Coaching, business coaching for executives, entrepreneurs, and small business professionals. Learn more at ib4e-coaching.com.
Hey, Coach Harlan here. Welcome back to the podcast. Hope you guys are having a phenomenal week. I'm having a great week, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest. Please help me welcome Randy Hain. Randy Hain is the founder and president of Serviam Partners and the co-founder of the Leadership Foundry. With a successful 30-plus year career in senior executive leadership roles, corporate talent, and executive search, he is a sought-after executive coach and leadership consultant for senior leaders and executive teams at some of the best-known companies in the U.S. who are seeking candid and expert guidance on how to identify and overcome obstacles to their success or develop new leadership skills. He's a husband, father of 2 adult sons, an active community leader, and serves on the boards of the causes he cares about most, including the board for the Brock School of Business at Samford University and the advisory board for the SEC Career Tour. He is also passionate about advocating for adults with autism in the workplace. Randy is an award-winning author of 12 books, including his newest book, Practical Virtue, an actionable guide to help you become a leader worth following. Randy, welcome to the program.
It is a pleasure, Harlan. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This is great. We were talking earlier. I'm loving the book, Practical Virtue.
Thank you.
I think we both think the same. Virtue is something that is missing in a lot of people, in a lot of lives, certainly in a lot of the leaders. And I don't, some of it is because I don't think they understand. Some of it, I think they don't know how to act in that way. We've been told so long, keep your emotions out of things. And now it's like, no, let some of the emotions back in. So what is that breaking point, or where is that divide?
You know, an interesting way for us to maybe unpack that, it's a great question, is to think about the difference between values and virtue. Because if you think about values, they're often on everybody's corporate website. We all have those things that we love the word, we believe in it, we're passionate about it. I'll give you the example of the value of kindness. I value kindness. I suspect you do too. Kindness is a great word. I love it, and I love to see it used. However, if we don't practice the value of kindness, it's really just a really great word. Virtue is the practice of those good things, those moral things, those uplifting things that we integrate into our daily behavior that makes them virtues. So
it's the action.
Action oriented.
Okay.
So again, kindness is a great value, but if you want to make it a virtue, you have to practice it to be kind, to be seen as kind.
Nice. Okay. I like that. Yeah. The action, we talk about courage too. Courage is fine sitting on the comfort of your couch, but it's action. Courage takes action, right?
Yeah.
Without action, it's just a nice thought,
Yes.
warm and fuzzy, but yeah, it takes action. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. I want to talk more about that because like I said, I had an idea for a book a long time ago. I will probably never get around to writing 12 books like you have. But yeah, I think it's a great topic to go into. But before we get started, Randy, I've got 10 icebreaker questions that I like to ask all my guests. These are questions made famous on the TV show Inside the Actor's Studio, where the host James Lipton asks these same questions of his Hollywood guests from TV, film, and stage. And I figure if they're good enough for the Hollywood elite, they're certainly good enough for my guests. So Randy, if you're ready, I've got 10 questions for you.
I have no idea what you're going to ask me, but I'm excited to hear.
All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite word?
Reflection. I love the word reflection. Over the years, I've really valued and I think plumbed the depths of what that word means. I'm very reflective. I walk, I reflect, I spend time in prayer and reflection. I just find it so valuable, and I get a lot of gold. I mine a lot of gold out of my reflection time. So I guess to sum it up, I'm more interested in thinking about where I've been than worrying about where I'm going. So reflection's my favorite word.
Nice. Okay. What is your least favorite word?
I really get annoyed with the buzzwords of the day. And this is one lately that's bugging me. Agency. It is so
Mhm.
overused. I'm tired of hearing it. I'm not even sure people know what it means, but agency is my annoying word of the day.
Okay. What turns you on?
Um, so I'll use the wholesome definition of that to think about what excites me, gets me happy, makes me go. Time with my family. I really enjoy time with my family. We're relaxed. We're just enjoying each other's company and loving and serving each other.
Nice. And what turns you off?
Hypocrisy. I don't value hypocrisy very highly.
What sound or noise do you love?
Um, I love the sound of Gregorian chant.
Mhm.
I'm Catholic, and when I get a chance to hear Gregorian music, it's very soothing, very comforting. It just lifts my spirit.
Very cool. What sound or noise do you hate?
My cats, when they're asking for food, which is three, 4 times a day. So not my
Constantly.
favorite sound. I love our cats, but that's an annoying sound.
Yeah. We've got a dog and we're babysitting a dog and they're always right there. The minute you sit down, they're right there. Like, what are we having? Yeah. All right. Randy, what is your favorite curse word?
Wow. That's a tough one because I don't really curse. But I think if I'm ever like pushed to the edge where I feel like I want to say it, I probably would use the word that starts with S and rhymes with bit. That might come out of me on occasion. So,
That I'm guilty of that too. All right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
history professor at a small New England college.
Nice. Very
I always thought about that as a noble and worthy exploration. It didn't work out for me, but I love my history and I love being in front of students.
nice. Very cool. All right. What profession would you not like to do?
Politician.
That ranks up high on the list. Absolutely. Okay. Final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, good and faithful servant. Well done, good and faithful servant.
Well done. Well done. Well, you have made a career of doing well. Very impressed with your background, the books you have, everything. I love where you're going with all of this, and definitely want to unpack a little bit more. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how you got your start, how you got to where you are now, who you work with, how you help them, some of the books, as many of them as we could talk about, and at some point transition into courage and leadership.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Listeners, we'll be talking about all that and more right after this. So stick with us. And I'm back with my guest, Randy Hain. Randy, thanks again for agreeing to be on the podcast. I've been looking forward to our conversation. I am enjoying your book, Practical Virtue, an actionable guide to help you become a leader worth following. Again, we talked a little bit before about its action. It's taking action on those things. And the book is kind of a guide on not just becoming a better leader, but becoming a better human. Right? And I think we're missing that. Where did we go wrong? Where did we go off path?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up the way you said it because I love that. And just to maybe put a finer point on it, I think the road to becoming a great leader is necessarily going to involve becoming a better human being. I can't name a single leader who I respect, would like to emulate or follow, that I don't also think is a pretty solid human being. So I think this marriage of virtue and leadership necessarily go together. I'll take a poke at what you just asked me, which it's a pretty deep question, but it's a good one. Like, where did we go wrong? I think when people of goodwill, people of faith, and I'm one of those people, declines to act on the values and virtue that they have learned through their experiences, through their faith, through whatever positive influence they've had. when they fail to act on those things and let those things show up, I think that we all suffer. I think everyone's so scared today to really have a really open, authentic conversation about what we really believe that we don't talk about anything. So therefore, the business world's become very amoral and morally ambiguous. So I think that's really the biggest issue that I see was we're just not being courageous enough to share all of that. Now, that doesn't mean that I need to walk into a meeting with you with a crucifix in my hand, but it does mean that I need to live out the values of my faith or those gospel values that I hold highly. And sometimes that doesn't involve me saying a word. It just means how I show up and treat other people and act that might draw you to ask me questions. But I hope I'm answering your question because that's a little bit of what I think is a much bigger problem.
Absolutely. And one of my pet peeves, if we were going to talk about those, the people that if they didn't tell you boldly, I am a Christian or I am a person of faith, you would never know by their actions. You would never be able to tell.
Yeah.
If you have to go around broadcasting that you are rather than just showing through your everyday actions, I've got a problem with that.
I think C.S. Lewis said this, but please check me if I'm wrong. If being a Christian was a crime, is there enough evidence to convict you? I think he said that, but even if he didn't, whoever said it, that's kind of very apropos to what you just said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've made servant leadership a cornerstone of the work that you do. For business owners and leaders that are constantly under pressure, how do you balance the demands of performance and the mindset of service?
I think it begins, and this is just my take, Harlan. I think it begins by not separating the two. I find that when you lead with abundance, when you lead with generosity, and your heart is geared towards, how can I help you? How can I add value? What can I do to serve you right now? And we don't keep score. If we truly have the mindset of, I want to be helpful, that if we put enough goodness into the world, then there will be goodness that comes back to us. But we cannot keep score. It's not a quid pro quo sort of approach. It's just try to act with a spirit of generosity and service. I have watched that play out in my parents' lives. When my mother was alive, she was famous for it. I've grown up living that way. And sometimes do you feel taken advantage of, or sometimes do you feel like, why am I investing? But by and large, the majority of my encounters have been a blessing right back to me. So my take is just act with abundance, not scarcity. Always lead with generosity.
Very cool. Your work emphasizes building strong, authentic relationships in business. In your experience, what's the biggest thing that gets in the way of that? And how can leaders overcome that?
I think there are three things that are typically the biggest obstacles to building meaningful business relationships, really relationships, period. I think the first is authenticity. I think people are afraid to bring their real selves into the relationship, into the dynamic. And the problem is we can all smell a phony. And I think when we try to be that perfect version of ourselves, it turns people off. I think the second obstacle to building effective relationships is lack of curiosity. Have you ever been with someone where all they wanted to do is tell you all about themselves and didn't ask you a single question? I loved it the day you started with questions. We got to know each other. So curiosity, making it more of a we conversation than a me conversation. And then finally, the lack of trust. Now, my business partner, Brandon Smith, has done a great job of building something called a trust formula that we use in one of the businesses that we own together. And the trust formula is really powerful. It's authenticity plus vulnerability multiplied by credibility is what yields trust. And can you name a single good relationship you have that is not built on a foundation of trust? It's really hard. So I think authenticity, curiosity, and trust are the three biggest obstacles to building relationships. And if you're struggling with this in any way, go back and analyze those areas of your life and you'll probably find a way to improve.
Yeah. Yeah, that authenticity comes up a lot. And I don't know what it is. People have such a hard time. You hear people saying that they're the imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
Part of that is not being authentically you. You're trying to be the person you see on social media. You try to be like the people you see on TV. Um, just be you. Just be yourself.
I was talking to a coaching client of mine. I coach a lot of senior leaders, and I was talking to her about 6 weeks ago. I remember this conversation. And she said, Randy, what is the single biggest thing that I can do to overcome my imposter syndrome? And my answer surprised her, but I think she eventually embraced it. I said, I want you to embrace vulnerability. When you embrace the power of being vulnerable, it invites people in. It lets them know that I'm authentic and I'm flawed and I'm human. It endears you to the other person. The other person will have more respect for you. It's counterintuitive. They'll respect you more if they know that you're just a human being doing your very best. And it's really made a difference in this woman's life. She's really embraced vulnerability. So I think that's a real key part of that.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. I remember I worked at Lockheed Aircraft years and years and years and years ago. And we were on one of the top secret government programs. We were trying to get this project out the door, trying to win a contract. And we failed. Our product wasn't picked. Another aircraft company was. And the senior program manager came down in front of it, right in front of everybody and stuff, and was just in tears, apologizing to us that he had let us down. It
Mm.
wasn't that we had done anything wrong. He took full responsibility for it. And for him to be that vulnerable to come, you don't see that often.
Yeah.
But the guys I was working with, it was like, no, we would follow this guy through fire if he asked us to. We would do whatever we could to work with him because he took the responsibility for everything on himself rather than pointing fingers. A lot of times you see managers, the old school, pointing fingers. Oh, you did this and blank, blank. Yeah, this guy took it all on himself and stuff, and it was awesome. And I'll never forget that.
I know that you have a lot of business owners that listen to your show, a lot of people that are, building their careers. I would say, even though again it's counterintuitive and you can't overuse it, but letting a customer know, I think I projected that we're going to get that done on Friday. I need another day. I need your grace for one more day to get it done correctly. We're going to while. Let me tell you what I'm doing to fix it. The customer, the client will value and appreciate you even more by being honest. So I think sometimes vulnerability, even for new business owners or people trying to grow their business, can be a valuable way to see some really solid growth. Being honest about misses. Vulnerability does not have to involve, by the way, vulnerable emotions. It's just being
Right.
honest about mistakes and being human.
Sure. And one of the types of courage we talk about on the program is intellectual courage. The courage to say, I
Mhm.
don't know, and be
Yeah,
fine with saying, I don't know. Somebody else can have a better idea. You don't have to be the
sure.
smartest person in the room and stuff. But that, for a lot of folks, that's tough. That's hard to do. Um, you've written and spoken a lot about intentionality. What does that look
Mhm.
like practically for a business leader to show up with intention every day? And how does that change, overcome, or how does that overcome things in time?
Intentionality for me, a lot of that, it's really connected to self-discipline. So, have you ever heard people say, my father was a drill sergeant? Well, my dad was a drill sergeant. So, I grew up in a household, we got up early, we get everything done by 8 a.m., and that's just the way I grew up. But I'm grateful for that because it really taught me self discipline at a young age. So, the way that spilled over into my professional life is discipline, or as we're talking about it now, maybe intentionality. Is I plan my days. Everything goes on the calendar. Now, I also have to be flexible. Intentionality without flexibility is rigidity. That's not
That's
good.
bad.
So intentionality is I have a game plan. I'm going to execute it. But you know what? If something comes up that overrides my priority that makes more sense, I may have to shift. Or an emergency pops up. Have you ever seen Stephen Covey's Matrix, the Eisenhower Matrix?
Yes.
It's a lot like not letting everything fit into that top left corner, which everything's urgent all the time, which is not healthy. So it's being intentional about managing your priorities, scheduling your day, honoring your commitments. All of those are elements of this. But a lot of that takes calmness, patience, managing your stress well, not letting the mundane and the boring become the urgent thing that cancels everything else. And also it helps to be able to say no, to be able to be intentional. Sometimes you have to say no to the things that don't really matter right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not always easy.
No,
I'm a pleaser. I was born, raised that way, I guess. I want to say yes to everything. People need help with this. Yes. People want to, yeah. Yes, I'm here. You got to learn to say no every once in a while. It's not a bad thing. And I think people respect you when you are honest with them and say, I'd love to help, but I can't really right now.
I think I'm one of the most helpful people I know, and I don't say that arrogantly. I try to be helpful, but I can also tell you that I've cultivated no as a superpower. Now, my no is not a brick wall. My no is, I can't help you at 5 o'clock today, but you know what? Tomorrow I've got 8 and 3:30. Would you like to pick one of those options? Or, Harlan, I can't do that project for you right now, but in 1 month I've got some freedom on my schedule. Can I help you then? I will be honest with you, but I can't say yes to everything when you want it. I have to be very honest with you and sometimes delay or move. Sometimes when people want a commitment from me, I do say no, but I explain the reason why.
Absolutely. Very cool. You talk about humility as a strength in leadership. That's not something you hear every day in business. Humility isn't something we come to expect from
Yeah.
our leaders. I think we should, but we don't. Why is humility so powerful, and how can a leader practice it without appearing weak?
Think about the opposite of humility, which is pride or ego. Think about how comfortable or uncomfortable you may feel with someone their ego is huge and they're overly proud. So we know what that feels like, and it's not comfortable. The only antidote for pride and ego is really the practice of humility. So there are a lot of different ways to think about this, but I'd love to give you the definition of one of my favorite authors. His name is Alex Havard, Havard. And he wrote an amazing book years ago titled Created for Greatness. It's one of the best books I've ever read. And he talks about the 2 virtues that are most critical for leaders. The first one is magnanimity, which is the call to greatness. You, I, everybody listening to this, the seed of greatness has been planted in all of us, but it's up to us to figure out how to make the most of that calling. What is it that we're called to do and go live it? However, it must be tempered with the practice of humility. The way he defines it is always acting in the service of others. If you empty yourself in the service of others, there's no room for ego. So if I tap into my call to greatness, but I do it in the service of my fellow man, that's the perfect balance between those virtues, and that makes a great leader. So I think that's an interesting way to think about humility the way you asked it.
Interesting. I like that. So you've written 12 books. What do you do in your spare time? Do you have spare time? 12 books. That's impressive. That's awesome.
Well, thank you.
Where do those books come from? I mean, do you always have ideas rolling around? Do you put an idea down for a while and then come back to it later to see if it still interests you and then write, or do you just write from the heart?
Yeah, I'll give you my boring process because I'm not sure it's going to be that thrilling, but I'll tell you the way I do it. I've written 12 books over 16 years. And almost every word in every book I've written has come from some form of inspiration, some experience, some encounter. I'm also a chronic journaler. So I want to show you something. This will be the 28th leather journal that I will have filled in 20 years. When I have spare time between client meetings, I get up early in the morning, I journal. After I take very long walks, I walk a lot. And I don't listen to podcasts, sorry, but I listen to them when I get back home. But I think and I reflect and I pray. But all of those thoughts go into my journal. And when I've got time, which is typically Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings before 8 a.m., I still get up early. I usually will go into the journals and just think about what have I been writing about? What have I been journaling about? And that usually becomes a blog post or a chapter in a book. So it's not like I go off to the mountaintop and say, I've got the inspiration for the book. I've never been able to write that way. I just tap into this ongoing source of inspiration, which is my work and my friendships and my ability to observe. Earlier you asked me, what's my favorite word? I reflect a lot on who have I been talking to this week? What really inspired me this week? What changed my life this week? And all of that goes into my book. So that's how I'm able to churn out the books the way that I do. And I've written about faith, leadership, what it's like to be the father of a special needs son. I mean, I write about a lot of topics, and I write what I mean. My books are, hopefully a very sincere reflection of what I truly think and feel.
Yeah, I like it. Like I said, I'm in the middle of practical virtue, and I'm liking it. We talked a little bit. Virtue is as an action, not just a theory. And again, I think that's one thing people, they think, oh, I have the words. We have our words up on the wall in the conference room. They're on our letterhead and everything like that. If you're not actually putting those into action, then that's all they are, is words.
Yeah.
We talked about intentionality. Humility is a strength, not a weakness. Serve first, lead better. With the groups or the executives you work with, what is it that they're missing, or what is it that they're like struggling to find? Is it a way to put these things into action, or is it understanding how they apply to the work area?
On one hand, I'm going to tell you that every client is unique, different in some way. But in some ways, there is a theme or two that runs through every client. So I'm hired by companies to work with their senior leaders. And I've spent a fair bit of time getting to know them, building trust and rapport, but I'm really trying to help them both articulate where they want to go, but also helping them uncover what are the obstacles between them today and success. What's holding you back from the success that you just shared with me? And then once we can identify, now I use testing and 360 feedback interviews and a lot of tools, but once we understand that, then it's a matter of saying, okay, Harlan has identified that he wants to be more candid. He wants to work on clarity. He'd like to get better at relationship building. And then we simply go about building strategies that are tailored to that client to help them build up their strength in that area so that's no longer an obstacle or a weakness. So in terms of identifying the issues and addressing them, that's a big focus of what I do. But I want to go back to the theme I mentioned it's in the way of all my clients being successful. It's stress management. Managing stress. You've got the stress of, having typically a family, maybe personal things going on in your life. You've got your career, you've got your team, profitability of the business. Maybe you started a business, whatever it is that you're feeling, it's creating stress. So helping my clients look in the mirror and start to build a bit of a self-care strategy. Now, I don't mean that like, yoga and green tea is the answer. Maybe it is for you. I don't know. But I usually advocate for exercise, quiet time to think, starting to build prioritization into your day where these are the things I must get done. These things are going to be pushed out. Regimented scheduling around the day ends at 6. I'm not emailing till 10 o'clock at night. My weekends are for my family and friends and for recovering my health. Getting people to build boundaries in their life these are all things that we do to help people overcome the stress they feel. But all of that big pile of stuff I just gave you is what I do, and those are the things I see.
Yeah, I'm thinking of some of the clients that I work with and stuff. The stress they carry is because they don't want to admit that they're afraid. They don't want to admit that things feel out of control. They're trying to handle everything and keep the brave face for their employees, their family, and that takes its toll.
Listen, I have written about this extensively, but 15, 20 years ago, I am a reform workaholic. I have absolutely worked the long days. I've traveled a lot. I've done all of that. But when I finally recognized the physical and mental toll it was taking on me and my family, I really had to course correct. And so I'm very intentional, my word again, I love that word, about how do I plan a day that is going to allow me to be effective for my clients, earn a living, be profitable, but also, more importantly, take care of my family, my health, and relationships. Today I've already worked out on the Peloton bike and walked 2 miles. I'll do it again before I go home tonight, before I wrap up the day. But I've gotten a lot of work done in between. But those exercise bookends allow me to get the stress off my body and be effective and also show up well for my family tonight.
Very cool. And then you also talk about virtues are contagious. How are they contagious?
Well, I think if you think about, if you notice someone in your life that is particularly good at practicing a virtue that you admire, let's say that you see someone who is amazing at the virtue of kindness or candor or courage, all virtues. If you see someone that is doing those virtues well, and you can see the positive impact that it's having on their lives and others, you by nature will be drawn to that and you'll start to emulate that behavior. It's like a pebble in a pond theory. If Harlan and Randy do X well today, and we're the pebble in the pond, the ripple effect will have a positive influence on others who want to do what we're doing. Now, conversely, if we demonstrate bad behavior, non-virtuous behavior, we could also have a negative ripple effect. So we have to be careful.
Yeah, that's why it's important not only to hire the right people in your company to fit the culture, but to respond if they go against the culture, if they do something bad, whatever it happens to be. I've had clients before that they're kind of afraid to say anything. They're the ones that hired this person. It might have been a bad hire, but they don't want to fire the person because they feel bad for them. So they just kind of tuck them over in a corner, keep paying them, but try to keep them out of the way of everything else. And it's like you're setting an example then for the rest of the employees. This is acceptable behavior to you. You will still get paid to be here if you don't do this.
It's one of the most demotivating things people do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you got to be careful. Is that a positive ripple or a negative ripple?
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about courage. We talk about different types of courage that leaders have to step into. We talked about social courage, saying what needs to be said, when it needs to be said. Discipline courage, doing the things that need to be done. Intellectual courage, saying I don't know, being okay, not knowing some things. And where you find the courage to step out and kind of create your own success, right? Where did that happen for you? When did you start your own business now, coaching executives? When did that happen?
So I had a 25-year career in corporate America as a senior leader. Really from 21 to 46, I worked in, traditional corporate roles, very senior roles. My last job, I was an equity partner and the managing partner of a very large search firm that worked nationally. And one of the things that really was affecting me there was I felt this calling to start my own coaching business. I love coaching. I really wanted to do it, but I had a lot of obstacles in the way. The biggest one, I guess, quite frankly, is I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a guy that's always looking to start a new business. That's not my makeup. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. We had 2 young sons at the time. My oldest son has special needs. She's got the toughest job by far in our family. I was the sole breadwinner. So I couldn't be cavalier about my choices. But I was writing a lot at the time about being authentic, honoring who you are. And I just felt a disconnect between my writing and the fact that I wasn't living out this passion that I knew I had. So I'm a structured guy. So I spent probably about 6 to 8 months before I eventually sold my equity, very quietly, just kind of thinking out, putting pen to paper, building out the model for what became Serviam Partners, my company. I also went out very thoughtfully to 10 senior friends I had in the industry, in the Atlanta area. And I just said, look, if I went out and hung my shingle, would you buy something like this? And these were not just good buddies. These were like candid friends, the ones that you really need on your side. And 9 of them said, I'd buy that from you. The other one was about to retire and said, I can't help you. but I knew that I had an audience for my coaching business. So I summoned the courage to honor this calling, this calling to activate whatever God had given me, to go and do it. And I took the leap. If you like history, you're probably familiar with Cortez landing in Veracruz, Mexico. And what he did to properly motivate his men and give them some courage was he burned his ships. And there was no going back. They were properly motivated and they felt some courage because they had no choice. Well, I burned my ships. I left my old company. I wasn't trying coaching. I was all in. And you know what? It turned out to be successful from the beginning. I was very blessed, very fortunate because I'd done my homework. I didn't have a 2-year ramp up period. I was able to replace my income and really do as well my first year as I'd done my last year in the old company. So a lot of planning, kind of a gutsy leap of faith, a lot of prayer, talking to my wife and other people whose advice I valued, gave me the courage to make that leap. And it's been the best thing I've ever done. And I stand here before you telling you I love what I do. I absolutely love it. I'm grateful to get to do it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Were the first clients, were they former clients you'd worked with or companies you'd worked for or something like that?
Some of them were. Yeah, some of them were because my old company did not do anything in the coaching arena. They had nothing. All they did was like recruiting for senior leaders. That's all they did. So there was no conflict of interest. I was only interested in doing just coaching. But some of them were clients. Some of them were candidates that I built friendships and relationships with. Some were people from my parish community. Some were just people I knew. So it was kind of a cross section. But what was ironic, this may be a great lesson for your listeners. So many of them said, well, of course we buy from you. We already see you that way anyway as kind of a coach. I'm like, aha, light bulb moment. Maybe I should have asked them how they see me. It might have made the leap sooner.
There you go. So in that move then to go out on your own stuff, you absolutely showed courage. Where did that courage come from? Have you always been courageous like that? Is that something you came through? You said your dad was a drill sergeant. Did it come from that, or where exactly did it come from?
So, yeah, I don't think I've ever considered myself courageous, but I can tell you where maybe some grit and resilience comes from that probably are good first cousins of courage. My mom and dad, amazing parents, but if there was a bottom rung on the middle class layer of, they were holding on by a pinky. They both worked, but we had love in our home and they were great providers. I had a job from the age of 11 on, so I was always taught to take care of myself and make my own spending money. I paid for my own college. I worked my way through school. So I've always been self-reliant, I think, and always looked to my own devices, my own abilities to make things happen. I've never been someone that's waiting for someone to take care of me. I've never been a victim. I've just been got to go make it happen. So that it was instilled in me at a very young age. But I think if there's anything that gives me the ability to really get through difficult times, it's primarily my faith. I'm a very devout Catholic, but I think secondarily, it's the love and support of my wife and children. They're amazing supports, and I couldn't function without them. So I think the way my parents raised me, my faith, and my family are the things that really inform and develop that courage that you've been so kind to identify.
Love that. Yeah, without my wife, I don't know where I'd be, honestly. So yeah,
I'd be in a ditch somewhere.
Probably. What do you look for in a leader?
I think first and foremost, I really value humility. I really value it. You said earlier, it's so rare, we don't talk about it, but I'm looking for a leader that really cares more about the team succeeding. I care about a leader that is never looking to take the credit. I care about and follow leaders that they're very self-effacing in everything they do. I just left lunch with such a leader before I got on the podcast with you. I've known this man for years. He's a senior executive at he just retired, but he was a senior executive at a Fortune 20 company. And he's just one of the most humble men I've ever met. And I just get a thrill out of spending time with him. So I don't see it often, but when I see it, I'm very drawn to it. And I really want to spend time either listening to or following those kinds of leaders.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to ask you if you had an example of somebody. Yeah. I can think back of leaders that have impressed me, like the one I was talking about at Lockheed Aircraft. I've seen some that just didn't understand. I told the story one time, a manager leaning across the conference table in a conference room and grabbing the guy across from him by the lapels and shaking him, screaming in his face. It's like, that's not leadership. That's being a bully.
It's abuse.
Yeah, it's abuse.
Jerk.
But I don't know if it's fear that, first of all, I don't think we know how to express ourselves anymore. That's why a lot of people, get in fist fights, because that's all they know.
Yeah.
It's action. I need to get it out of my system. I think we do need to learn to talk and communicate a lot more. To me, leadership is communication. If you're not a good communicator, you're not going to be a very effective leader.
One of the virtues that I wrote about in my book was the virtue of civility. And I started out with a story about someone that called me just before I wrote that chapter. It was not on my radar, but this person called me and they wanted to talk about a very difficult topic that we were on the opposite ends of the topic. And this guy was not a friend of mine. He was a friend of a friend, but I knew him. And we went through, he wanted to get my opinion on that topic. And we had an hour-long conversation. And we were very, very different, but we were calm. We were never angry. We both asked questions of the other. And at the end of it, I was still as firmly in my camp as I was ever going to be, but we had gotten through an hour of great dialogue. And you know what we wound up doing? We had coffee, and we've actually become pretty good friends since then. Now, we don't agree on that topic, but we found a lot of other common ground. What I just said, which you and I may espouse and believe, is very rare today. When we find that someone disagrees, we marginalize them and put them into a silo instead of reaching out and saying, well, what do we have in common? And I really get frustrated by that, and it's more and more common every day.
Yeah. I read somewhere, and I forget where it was, might have been like over in Denmark or something like that. They have a library where you can go in, and instead of borrowing a book, you sit down across the table and have a conversation with somebody. And you just talk. Whatever the topic is, you just talk for a little while. And when you're done, you move over maybe to another table and engage someone else. It's just about getting back to dialogue, because I think we've kind of lost that now. You have your 30-second earworm that they put out on the news or on social media, and that's not conversation. I think we need to get back to talking.
One of the things I do in one of my workshops on building relationships is I have a very simple breakout exercise that's 15 minutes long. So it's a group of 5, and I ask them to share, everybody shares where you're from, your favorite hobbies, and one thing about yourself that nobody knows that you're comfortable sharing. Spend 15 minutes going around the table. We're going to come back and debrief. And listening to the laughter and just the joy that comes out of it. And these are people that actually already work together. And they come back and they're like, I had no idea. Oh my gosh, Bill does this, Sally does that. They work together and they never even got to those basic questions. And I challenge them to not wait for the consultant to come in, do this on your own, but just sitting down and having dialogue. It's become more and more rare.
Awesome. Love that. So what's next for you? I mean, you've got 12 books. You say you have another one started. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's another leadership book that's, just kind of rooted in my reflections, various topics. I'm going to talk about, relationships through the lens of building your own tribe. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to go deeper into patience, just things that I find are topical and interesting. So should come out next spring. Because Practical Virtue came out this year, I'm not going to rush it for the fall. I'll probably do it next spring. But I'm at an age and a place in life where I let these things happen organically. Fortunately, because I blog so much, I typically can do a book a year. But right now, it'll happen when it happens, but probably next year. And I'm doing a lot of program design for some of the nonprofits I serve. So I'm building some mentor programs for some of the big nonprofits that I'm very fortunate to work with, and that's taken up a lot of my creative time.
Nice. Very cool. Good stuff. Well, Randy, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are and everything. But this has been great. If people want to learn more about you, about Serviam Partners, your Leadership Foundry, all the things you're doing, all the books, how can they do that? What's your website?
Serviampartners.com is the best website to go to for my coaching business. MyLeadershipFoundry.com for the Leadership Foundry, which is more of a global, big group and senior executive team development. And then LinkedIn is the best place to follow me. I blog there, I post there. You can follow me. That's probably the best place to kind of keep up with me every day.
Awesome. And all of your books, are they available on your website, or do we send people to Amazon, or?
All my business books are available through my website, but ultimately Amazon is the best repository. Even my website directs you to Amazon, so that's the best place to go.
Perfect. All right. I will have all of those links down in the show notes. So listeners, definitely go out, check out all the books. I would highly recommend Practical Virtue, an actionable guide to help you become a leader worth following, because that's something that we all should do. Ralph Nader, I think, said that the goal of a leader is to make more leaders, right? Not more followers. We have plenty of followers. We need more leaders. So
I agree.
Absolutely do that. Great. Randy, thanks again for being on here. Listeners, hope you guys are taking a lot of notes, a lot of good information here. All the links will be down in the show notes, and I hope you check everything out. Share this episode with your family, friends, colleagues, and stick around because there's always more coming. That's it for me, Coach Harlan, saying so long for now.
Thank you.